Hello Internet, says Skorokowski, and welcome to part 6, the final episode in my review / how-to / overview for Kult Divinity Lost. And I've been taking a while to get to this episode, a little bit longer than I've been planning to. Part of that's because of some outside factors, some announcements, and other stuff that I was kind of hoping would come out. But honestly, the biggest reason is that this series has really been a big underperformer for my channel. I mean, I knew it was going to be a pretty low performer coming in, but episodes 4 and 5 were just so low that I need to kind of spread all of these out a bit, because while I do love talking about lesser known RPGs, I am still subject to the dreaded algorithm. Anyway, poor excuses aside, so far we've talked about character creation, the game's mechanics as far as player and game master moves, how advancement works, and then combat, and in the last episode, stability. We've covered all the rules, or at least most of the rules anyway, so this video is more about the things that I wasn't able to fit in anywhere else in those other videos, as well as my overall thoughts and criticisms and suggestions for Kult Divinity Lost. So let's go ahead and just talk about my biggest criticisms of the game. Just rip the tape off and get that part out of the way. First is magic. There is a serious lack of magic rules in Kult, and it's one of my biggest complaints about the game. We have a little bit of information on the various paths of magic and magicians, death, madness, passion, dream, and time and space. We know that magicians must create a sanctified temple, and that takes 7 days to do, and we know that some form of sacrifice must be made when doing a ritual, but we have no guidance on the rituals themselves, what all they entail and require, and what all it is that they can reasonably do. The core book says that magicians are enlightened archetypes, which the book itself focuses on sleeper and aware archetypes, which are a little bit less. And while we have a little bit of a taste in this book, future books will further explore magicians and other aware archetypes, but that book still hasn't been released yet, and the game's been out for a few years now, so I would really like some information for NPC magicians or occultist player characters who have the dabbler and the occult advantage, and while they aren't full magicians themselves yet, they can follow the instructions to a ritual, so I kind of want a little bit more information on what all a ritual entails so I can have an occultist player character do a ritual. Next is monsters. As I've brought up, we have a lot of monsters in this game. Some can be powerful powers like fallen angels, while others might be lowly creatures. But maybe only half of those creatures in the book have stats, and as I mentioned earlier in the series, the more powerful entities like lictors or nephrites are all each unique for whatever power that it served or serves, so I'd still like some more statted examples of them, even if I might have to tailor and tweak them a bit for the individual one that the player characters meet. Simply a starting point. If a surprise player roll failed and all of a sudden it causes a creature to appear that I wasn't anticipating before this very moment, I don't want to make this thing up entirely, and I just prefer to use all of my improv brain power to focus on what this creature is doing rather than kind of all the gears and mechanics of what that creature is. So while yes, I do have it on good authority that there is material coming out that's got a lot more monster stats in it, it's not currently out yet, so game masters should know that before they pick up Kult Divinity Lost. Now, there are a few minor complaints that I have about the mechanics. Players roll 2d10, total that up with any modifiers, and compare the results to see what the tier of success they made. However, modifiers seem to be a bit low in this game, usually just +1 or +2, which doesn't make too dramatic of a difference. In other Powered by the Apocalypse games, where players roll 2d6, that gives a range result ranging between 2 and 12. So, having a +1 or a +2 on that can be a dramatic difference. But with Kult using 2d10, I think that modifier range should have been increased, maybe bringing that up to a +3 or maybe even a +4. For example, a character's relations go through the ranks of 0 through 2, 0 being casual relationships, or possibly co-workers, with 2 being vital relationships, like a character's kids or their soulmate. And those ranks, 0 through 2, equal their modifiers when dealing with that relation, which 1 or 2 ain't all that much, so we'd have liked to have added at least one more rank to that entire structure, making vital relationships either a plus or a -3. One area that I've had a little bit of trouble with from time to time is partial success, the middle 10 to 14 range. Statistically, and before any dice modifiers, there is a 43% chance that rolling 2d10 falls within this range, so that's almost half of all rolls made. Now, most of the time that's perfectly fine. We can do it as a partial success or do it as a success with complications, no problem at all. Other times, I really just want a binary answer to this roll. Did we pass this roll or did we fail this roll? I don't want to be exerting all my brain power coming up with some, new twist or new development. I really just want, pass or fail. Or maybe do it as binary as did we have a total success or did we have a success with complications? But the 3-tier system can be a bit annoying at times. And now that I have said that, I've said, hey, you know what? I'd like to have a 2-tier system. Let me go ahead the other way and say that there are cases where if a modified result is either below 2 or above 20, I would like something a bit more dramatic, some sort of critical success or critical failure. After all, getting a 20 or a 2, that's only a 1% chance of each of those. So getting above or below that, meaning that we had to have some modifiers involved, those are extremely rare to have happen. For example, let's say that a player attempts and observe the situation and just rolls off the chart, scores like a 22 or 23. Now, instead of getting to ask 2 questions, like on a 15 to 20, they get to ask 3 questions instead. Or instead of getting a +1 to any rolls if they act on those answers, they get to have a +2 to any rolls acting on those answers. Or on the flip side, if they rolled and the modified result came up being below 2, the Game Master could have it where instead of making a single move, the Game Master makes 2 moves.
Now, it might seem kind of weird that we're there saying that we'd like to have more binary options of either pass or fail. And then we're immediately backing that up with saying we'd like to have 2 more options on top of that of being either a critical success or a critical failure. But it is a whole lot easier to tell somebody, hey, not only did you succeed, you really succeeded. Or, not only did you fail, you completely bombed that one, than it is to be telling somebody, yeah, you succeeded kinda, but you also kinda failed. Which once again, it's over 40% of the time that you're going to be having that yes, but category.
There are a few tips that I do have for running Kult Divinity Lost. The game is extremely narrative-focused, and the player is entrusted with a good deal of decision-making power, how the dice results are interpreted, but each character starts off with an assortment of disadvantages and advantages and NPC relations, and as the game progresses on, the campaign is moving forward, each character should be amassing more and more of these. So one area that I suggest that Game Masters charge their players with is reminding you of when those individual disadvantages or dark secrets might be coming into play here. Some of them are really easy to remember, but Game Master, if they're dealing with 3 or 4, even 5 players, and each of them has several disadvantages, it can become real easy for the Game Master to forget when a particular situation should call for a disadvantage roll.
So Game Masters, charge your players with helping remind you when it is that they should be suffering from the disadvantages. Kind of like, hey, we're at this party. Is there anything here that might spark my drug addiction? Or, now that we've found a place to crash for the night, do I need to check to see if I suffer any nightmares? Remember that Kult is a game for mature players only, and a big part of that is you got players who are mature enough to trust you and trust one another, and remind the Game Master when it is that they might need to suffer a disadvantage roll, rather than just, crossing their fingers and hoping that the Game Master forgets to do it.
As far as dark secrets and relations and how everything fits together and keeping track of all the allies and the adversaries, Kult recommends that Game Masters create what's called an intrigue map to show how everything relates to one another. Beyond Darkness and Madness gives us some suggestions on different ways that Game Masters could design and organize their intrigue maps for, whatever their personal tastes are or whatever their personal game is about. I personally don't use intrigue maps in our game. I've got my own method that I've developed and evolved with for many years of being able to run different games and writing novels, but other Game Masters out there who haven't, run any games with all these moving parts and NPC relations and backstory secrets and adversaries, they're going to need to have some sort of easy method to keep themselves organized. So an intrigue map is a pretty simple method for any of those Game Masters out there that don't already have their own system in place. Next is time. I've mentioned that Kult is a very improv-heavy game, and how that can burn through a Game Master's mental brain power. Now, with other games, we can easily run 8 to 9 hour sessions whenever we play. That's our norm. But with Kult, I can only run 3, maybe 4 hours at a time before my brain is just taxed out. Now, for some groups out there, 3 to 4 hours, that's the kind of normal session length for them, so that should be the norm for them, and that's going to be totally fine, and they'll adapt to it with no issue at all.
It ain't just mental fatigue that requires our sessions be shorter with it. It's also emotional. Kult is a game that is designed to give an emotional experience, and we have achieved deeper levels of roleplay and highly emotional scenes more effectively with Kult than we have with any other tabletop role-playing game. The cost of that, however, is that we are completely unable to do normally long marathon sessions with it.
Available resources. While I've talked mostly about the core rulebook and Beyond Darkness and Madness, which is the Game Master's Guide, there are several adventures and adventure collections out there. And, I've reviewed a few of the scenarios, and there's a couple more out there that I'd like to play and I'd like to run and eventually review. And while the scenarios do cover a wide variety of different plots and types of horror and provide a wide swath of what it is that Kult can do, most of those adventures are written as one-shot adventures, meaning that they're tailor-made for a specific group of player characters with very specific backgrounds. Oakwood Heights is one of these. Great scenario with great characters. Well, okay, most of them are actually really awful people, but they're really well-done characters with personal stories and dark secrets that are all interwoven very well into the plot. However, there really aren't that many true adventure modules out there for Kult. Scenarios where a game master can, maybe with a few minor tweaks, drop this adventure into their ongoing campaign using whatever player characters that they have at the moment. The Atrocity Exposition is one of those, and we use that adventure as an introduction for our current Kult campaign. So game masters, just be aware that most of the published scenarios are designed as one-shot adventures requiring a very specific group of pre-generated characters, rather than just being easy to adapt adventure modules that you could use with a wide variety of characters. Hopefully we will see more general adventures in the future, but for the time being, while there are a lot of great adventures, there aren't that many good adventure modules. In addition to the various rulebooks and adventures, Kult releases a free short PDF every month. The Kult drops can range from anything from adventures, monster profiles, optional rules, or setting profiles. Currently, there are 26 Kult drops out there. I stick a link in the video description below for anyone willing to check those out. They are a really cool grab bag of free material, so just be aware of them. Now, speaking of free material, there's also the Ryan Northcott Memorial page. There are several resources there for free, including some scenarios, as well as any donations that anyone would like to give to Ryan's widow and daughters. Once again, link below for that. Helmgast has announced a few upcoming projects in the near future. One is for Metropolis and a sourcebook for The Illusion in the Borderlands. No idea when those are going to be released or kickstarted, but as recently as last month, they have still been announced as being forthcoming. Overall, despite my complaints, I love this game. Between the rules and the mature and, I admit, sometimes a bit edgy themes that it has, this is by far the most niche RPG that I play. Most of them are, a lot more popular and a lot more, available for people out there. But it's one of those games that instantly clicked with me from the moment that I first opened the rulebook, and I knew that I was going to be in love. Now, our gaming and roleplay has improved from our experience playing Kult, and it's certainly changed my views of what it is that RPGs can do and what RPGs can be. And while it can certainly feel a bit, nihilistic at times, I don't feel that it's a nihilistic or game about, hopelessness. Now, one comment that I've received multiple times since I first started talking about Kult on my channel is that Kult is like Call of Cthulhu, but without the sense of hope. And I disagree with that statement. It's the opposite. Call of Cthulhu takes place in a world with powers who are indifferent to humanity. We are meaningless beings that are living on an ultimately doomed world. Characters, they might be able to carve out a little bit of more time before the world is destroyed and inherited by other beings, but ultimately humanity is going to lose this fight and be forgotten. Kult Divinity Lost, humanity isn't meaningless. We're the focus of everything, what the powers and the forces wish to contain and control. They're not indifferent toward us at all. They fear us. And while our characters may suffer and experience horrible things, the ultimate goal, the path that they're on, leads them to breaking free of their prison and ascending into the gods that we forgot we are. This is a game about hope. That no matter what horrors that we've endured, or what other horrors we're certainly going to endure during the progress of our adventures, we will overcome them, and we're going to awaken to our true selves and reach our fullest potential.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews, a Game Master Toolbox, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, cultists, you have a great day. I really like that speech that you gave about hope and optimism, so I I hope that means that we're eventually going to get back to my backstory problem I got going on with that missing apartment building and whatever the hell it is that's after me, because you promised me that we were going to get back to that and just not just going to let that lie. But it's been a couple months now and we haven't talked about it since, and I'm beginning to lose my patience.